to subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon to never miss an upload.
Back in the day when I used to teach kids, we're driving on a road trip, you see a homeless guy on the street, like sleeping in a cardboard box. Hey guys, do you think that guy's successful? Do you think that guy's successful? What is pretty much every child going to say? No. We're driving further and you see a beautiful mansion. Clearly not in Texas because it's at the ocean front. Right? There's this beautiful mansion at the ocean. And you look at it and you say, hey guys, the guy who lives in here, you think he's successful? There's a couple of fancy cars parked outside, maybe an Italian and a German car. It's a gorgeous house, just absolutely epic place. You can see the basketball court in the back and a swimming pool overlooking the ocean. The guy lives in here, successful, you think? And what are they going to say? Yeah, pretty successful. In other words, it's not just because those kids are bad kids or they don't really know Islam or whatever. Human beings generally, when we look at some things, we say that's success. And we look at some other things and we look at that as failure. Somebody who graduated from school is successful. Somebody who dropped out is a failure. Somebody who got a job is successful. Somebody who didn't get a job is a failure. Somebody whose business took off is successful. Somebody whose business crashed is a failure. The guy who won the elections is a success. The guy who lost the elections is a failure. The Spurs are a success. The Heat are a failure. That's how we look at success and failure, isn't it? Now, take that a step further. In the Quran, Allah talks about Ibrahim alayhi salam. You know this prophet's name? Ibrahim alayhi salam. Allah describes that he got kicked out of his house. He was homeless. Is Ibrahim alayhi salam one of the greatest examples of success in human history? But he's homeless. But when you looked at someone homeless, the immediate thought that you had was what? That they are a failure. But the Quran is describing a homeless person as the ultimate success. The greatest success, as a matter of fact. The Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, our messenger, alayhi salatu wasalam, was homeless for a couple of years. He had to live in a cave. He was exiled. He was deported. Somebody being deported from their country, would you call that a success? That's insane. But he's the greatest success humanity's ever seen. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. On the other hand, you have the guy that if they had TV crews back in the day, then they would be doing a celebrity cribs show on his house. It's Fir'aun. He had the biggest house ever. The most elaborate house. Thousands of construction workers dedicated to building his house, his castle. Anybody would look at that back in the day and say, that's success. But what does the Quran teach us about Fir'aun? His failure. Allah talks to us about Qarun. Qarun, interesting example. Qarun is a guy that had vaults. Like he had so much money, he had to have vaults. And those vaults used to have massive gates. So they're underground vaults with the lid for a manhole on the street. They're kind of heavy. But this massive vault, and you couldn't just lift it. He had to hire a group of guys, like muscle men, that would have to lift the gates to his vault. That's how heavy those vaults were. That's how Allah describes his wealth. And He describes him as one of the worst examples of failure. The Quran describes it. In other words, and by the way, the Quran is not saying that being poor is a success and being wealthy is a failure. That's not true either. That's not true either. Allah does in the Quran talk about people that are wealthy and powerful and are successful. He talks about that too. But what the Quran is saying then, what is its definition is then, is that true in the essence of the word, money, power, wealth, none of these things actually have anything to do with success. And not having money, not having power, none of that actually has anything to do with failure. If you have it, like for example, the point is if you have money, it's possible that you're a success, but it's also possible that you're a failure. If you don't have money, it's possible that you're a success, and it's also possible that you're a failure. That doesn't determine whether or not you're a success or failure. It has nothing to do with it. As a matter of fact, the only thing that determines success or failure is about losing, isn't it? But what is the ultimate loss according to the surah? Time. So if you're not using your time wisely, then you're a failure. And if you're using your time wisely, then you are a success.